So as I mentioned, this is Baptism of the Lord Sunday. It's been kind of a season of baptismal liturgy for us. A few weeks ago, we got to celebrate the joy and excitement of 3 baptisms. Baby Luna, which is always just amazing to see and participate in the baptism of a baby, as well as a mother-son combo of Megan and Thomas Long. It was just this beautiful moment, this beautiful worship service where we got to celebrate together this sacrament. And there is just such profound beauty in the sacrament of baptism. And I love the way that our tradition, our theological tradition, has talked about baptism over the years. But it's really unfortunate that baptism, as beautiful and as foundational as it is to so much of our theology, it has also become this point of contention between so many different Christian groups. I mean, leave it to the church to take something so beautiful and turn it into a millennia-long fight, right? And this is, an active thing that is going on. It's not just kind of abstract theological ideas that, who really cares? These are things that have real impact on the way we live and move in the world, the way we see ourselves and the way that we see each other. One of the most surprising things about this story, the thing that a lot of early Christians really had a hard time kind of making sense of, is that Jesus would be baptized at all. Who, as John himself says, who could possibly be worthy to confer this powerful, mysterious ritual onto the very Son of God? Why does Jesus need to be baptized at all in the first place? We're told that John's baptism that he is doing out in the wilderness is a baptism for the forgiveness of sin, but our whole theology holds that Jesus has no need of that. So we have all sorts of ways of kind of making sense of it, and this is Jesus perhaps giving us a model to follow, setting the example, however we might make sense of it. Ultimately, those aren't the questions that really matter. What really matters, and what I think this experience was all about for Jesus as well as for us, is the words that come from the voice from heaven. And it's interesting, in Matthew and in Mark, in Mark and in Luke, the voice, God's voice, we presume, speaking to Jesus, is directly to Jesus. It's the second person pronoun. You are my son. With you I am well pleased. In Matthew, it's more of a public pronouncement. God declaring before all of the people, this is my son, with whom I am well pleased. In other words, it's almost as if in Matthew's version, this voice is meant to prove the identity of this person to the crowds who are gathered. Whereas for Mark and for Luke, the purpose of the voice is for no one but Jesus. It is for Jesus to hear once again, to be reminded once again that he is God's beloved Son, that with him, God is well pleased. And that is the basic promise, is the basic foundation of Jesus' identity, and therefore also of our identity. In baptism, whatever else might be happening, in baptism we discover our true identity. We discover who it is that we were created to be, who it is that we already are as we were created. We often have this sense that baptism confers something special onto us. And this is what I mean when I say that it can lead to some dangerous places, because we can then divide the world up into different groups and different categories between the baptized and the unbaptized. In other words, the righteous and the sinners, the good and the bad, those who are in and those who are out. And this is what I love about our theology of baptism, is that for us it's not actually connected to salvation at all. We believe, and I think there's plenty of biblical evidence to suggest, that baptism is not related directly to salvation in the sense that by being baptized we attain salvation. Baptism is much more fundamental than that. It almost has, I want to say it has nothing to do with salvation, but that's not the primary value that we hold in baptism. The primary value that we hold in baptism is simply the revelation that we are God's beloved children already. We talk about baptism as a sign and seal of God's grace. It is a sign that points us to something that already exists, that is already here with us and for us. And it seals it for us in our bodies, in our spirits, so that we can live from that new place of understanding, that we can come to a deeper understanding of who we are. We are surrounded by all sorts of voices and messages about who we are and who we are supposed to be. It's that time of year where you've probably broken at least 6 of your New Year's resolutions by now. Maybe you're holding firmly to the one that you've kept, the easiest one that you made for yourself, right? We're obsessed with all sorts of self-help things. I mean, there's this massive cottage industry. People are making millions and millions of dollars selling you this supplement or that supplement with all sorts of words that I can't pronounce that they promise me are safer than the chemicals I can't pronounce, but they all seem very confusing. We are obsessed with trying to find something we can add to ourselves to make us whole, to make us right, to make us good, to make us feel worthy, to make us feel like we matter. That's what baptism is. Baptism is the complete revelation of God's love for us, showing us that we don't need to add anything else to ourselves. In fact, often what we need is to remove those hindrances, the things that keep us from seeing that and believing that about ourselves. And again, we will hear and continue to hear all sorts of things about who we are, who we're supposed to be, all of the ways that we have fallen short. Henry Nouwen, a wonderful Catholic priest and mystic, he writes of baptism and this idea that we too are the beloved of God. He says, "The world will tell you many lies about who you are, and you simply have to be realistic enough to remind yourself of this. Every time you feel hurt, offended, or rejected, you have to dare to say to yourself, these feelings, strong as they may be, are not telling me the truth about myself. The truth, even though I cannot feel it right now, is that I am the chosen child of God, precious in God's eyes, called the beloved from all eternity, and held safe in an everlasting belief." To hold to that truth even when we don't believe it, and even when it feels fundamentally untrue, to hold to that truth of the ground of who we are is nothing more and nothing less than God's beloved. It's not about God coming in and adding something to us. It's about us realizing that who we are in baptism is the way God sees us in every moment of our lives, that God can't see us in any other light than in the light of love. And if we really believe that, really believe that, if that can be a part of who we are, it fundamentally changes everything. It's not enough on its own to change everything, but we can pretty much not see any kind of progress apart from that basic idea and that basic belief becoming fundamental to who we are. It is a powerful thing that happens when we can incorporate and integrate that kind of love into our bodies and into our spirits, when we recognize that as we baptize this tiny little baby who has no idea what's going on, right? She's just playing with the water. She's looking around, has no clue what is happening to her in this moment. Some might look at that and say, what are you doing? This is a waste of time. She doesn't believe any of these things. How can she believe on her own? And that's the point, is that we come around her and anyone else in this church community or anyone else that we come in contact with. We surround them and tell them, this is who you are. Before you hear anything else about yourself, you are a beloved child of God. One of my heroes in the faith is a man named Howard Thurman. He was a kind of a early to mid 20th century African-American preacher, poet, activist, mystic, and he tells this powerful story. He grew up actually here in Florida. He tells this powerful story about introducing his own daughters to the experience of racism. They had come upon a playground and they wanted to play at this playground, but he had to explain to them that they could not. He said this. He says, is it against the law for us to use those swings, even though it is at a public school? At present, only white children can play there. But it takes the state legislature, the courts, the sheriffs and policemen, the white churches, the mayors, the banks and businesses, and the majority of white people in the state of Florida. It takes all these to keep two little black girls from swinging in those swings. That is how important you are. Never forget, the estimate of your own importance and self-worth can be judged by how many weapons and how much power people are willing to use to control you and keep you in the place they have assigned for you. You are two very important little girls. Your presence can threaten the entire state of Florida. This is what it means to live from that place of deep identity, of recognizing that no matter what happens around us, no matter what kind of world we live in, no matter the pain, no matter the violence, no matter the hatred, that every single one of us, at our very core, is nothing more and nothing less than a deeply beloved child of God. When we embrace that vision of baptism, when we embrace that baptism isn't the thing itself, but it's actually pointing us to a deeper reality that is true for all of us, when we embrace that, we start to recognize that baptism has nothing to do with who's in and who's out. It has nothing to do with has nothing to do with exclusion, and has everything to do with inclusion, because we recognize that this is a grace and this is a gift that is given to us, but not us alone, that this gift and this grace is meant to be shared. Whenever, when you come to church and you look in the bulletin and you see, like on this morning, there's a section of the lectionary that's kind of like randomly cut out in the middle, right? Like today it was, Luke 3, 15 to 17 and 21 to 22, right? First of all, you should be asking, well, what happens in there? Don't worry, it's nothing crazy, nothing weird or anything. But notably, I think, that's the part where it talks about all the tax collectors and sinners who were coming out to the wilderness to be baptized by John. This is what we do so often. We take this beautiful thing, this beautiful story, this beautiful theology, and we turn it into something that is defining people, in or out, sinner or holy, righteous, unrighteous, redeemed, condemned. But baptism is the thing that should break through all of that noise, that should break through all of those other competing interests that are always trying to draw us and pull us in all these other different directions, but instead reminds us to remain grounded in the foundation of love that is built into each and every one of us, and to recognize that same love in the face of the other, in the face of the stranger, in the face of the enemy, in the face of the one whom we are told is dangerous and doesn't belong in this country any longer. When we take this seriously, it changes everything we think we know about the world. It changes everything that we see and everyone that we see. So friends, remember, no matter what else, you are a beloved child of God. That is who you are, beyond and before anything else can be true. You are a beloved child of God. So let us go live as beloved children of God, recognizing the belovedness that is built into every single person that we meet. From God, through God, and to God are all things. To God be glory forever. Amen.